I'm Marcy Eberts with System Education, and we are going to start some education on the new Zoll R-Series defibrillator. All the educators in the System Education department have been trained on this, so if you have any questions after this video, find your educator and ask your questions. Hey, this is our new Zoll R-Series defibrillator, and we're giving you a quick in-service via video. So, quick overview of our new defibrillator. On the top here, you'll notice 3 cords. This one is the one that delivers the joules. This is the EKG cable, and this is for capnography. Now these 3 cords will always stay with the machine. They're not disposable, just keep them plugged in. Also on the top you'll see the paper tray, so very easy to load, nothing to thread or anything, just comes in a stack, goes in easily, pull out a little bit, paper tray's ready to go. This is also where the battery is. You can check your battery by hitting that button right there. It'll light up to show you that it's working. It can also pop it up in and out really easily. You'll notice on the front here, you'll have these lights that tell you, it's blinking right now to tell me that my battery's not in. So I will put it back in to make it happy. You see this green one is telling us it's plugged into the wall. This now is yellow because it's charging. It'll turn green when it's fully charged. Also right here on the front, you'll see this red X. So this is a very smart machine, and every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning it will silently wake up and run through over 100 self-checks. One of those checks involves knowing that the pads, which are supposed to be continuously plugged into the machine, it will check the expiration date on the pads for you, and it'll let you know in the morning if it didn't pass that check. It will also do the daily defibrillation check, so no more having to check our defibs by plugging into that little box and checking a defibrillation charge into that. So instead, we just leave our therapy cable plugged into pads all the time, and every morning at 3 a.m. it will just by itself deliver a shock into there of 30 joules and continue on its way. Now, last night it wasn't plugged in, so instead of a green check mark here, we have a red X saying that it failed its self-test because it wasn't plugged in. So, if that ever happens to you, this is how you get rid of it. You take this therapy cable and plug it right here into the side of the machine and deliver that 30 joule charge right into the machine itself. So you'll just turn this to defib. We're going to select the energy down to 30 joules, charge, and just shock it right into the machine itself. It started printing, so I'm going to hit recorder to make that stop. And now you can see that my red X has been replaced with a green check. It doesn't light up, it's just there. So now we know that it's good to go, but we're going to plug it into the pads. This is how it should be all the time. It should just be at resting state plugged into the pads. So when you ever need it, you don't have to fumble around with that cord. You can just open the pads and get started. Okay, let's go over the other functions of the front of the machine. So this is like the main dial. It's going to have one function of monitor. So you could use this, like if you're going to transport a patient and you just wanted to use it as a monitor, you can use it as a monitor this way. Instead of using the pads though, you would want to use just a 3-lead EKG. So that cable is back here in the little net holder, and you would just plug those into your patient there and plug your therapy cable.
Check pads.
So that is how it would be configured for just the monitor. Some buttons you might need to use while you're monitoring are here to change the lead. If you are not using the pads, it comes on automatically to look for the pads. So you need to change the lead to tell it to look for the electrodes instead. You might adjust the gain by using the size button. The other 2 buttons on here are to shush your alarms and to print a strip. That's about it on the monitor side. Okay, let's go over the pacemaker function of our defibrillator. So our friend here is in a very bradycardic rhythm, and we're going to attempt to pace him. So we're just going to turn our dial to the green section of pacer. And then you'll adjust milliamps here by just turning that dial up until you get capture. has a very thick chest wall. So once I have capture, you'll add about, I'm at 60 milliamps, so you're gonna add about 10% for safety. And then you can also adjust the rate here using this dial. Turn your rate up. You'll see that the rate here, where it says permanent pacemaker, matches our rate up there closely. Also, we have this cool little button here. It says 4 to 1. When you press and hold this button, it'll show you what your underlying rhythm is, but it'll still deliver a paced beat every 4th beat, so it just inhibits every 3, so you'll still maintain perfusion. You can see your underlying rhythm. As soon as you release that button, it goes right back to 100% pacing. So in this code, we are going to cardiovert this patient. So for cardioversion, you're going to turn your dial to defib, and as it comes on, you're going to see my patient is in a very rapid AFib, and we're going to go ahead and sync the machine. So to sync it, it's this soft key. It says sync on off. So you'll hit this sync button, and then you can charge. So I'm going to double check that I'm synced by looking at that little white ball bouncing along the R waves, and then I'll select my energy. Let's start with 75, and then we'll charge and clear, deliver the shock. Now sometimes you might have to hold that shock button down for just a second so that it will deliver the shock right with the R wave. Notice that the bouncing ball has now disappeared, so you would have to hit the sync button again each time you need to attempt a cardioversion. Otherwise, it defaults back to defibrillation. Okay, so there's some situations where you're going to want to deliver a shock without doing CPR, like in cardioversion. In those situations, you're not going to want to use the big one-step pads that include the CPR feedback device. So instead, you're just going to disconnect this pad and plug it into one of our cheaper alternative pads that just will deliver a shock only. So this, you'll notice, has a smaller plug-in. It's just going to plug into the top portion of the therapy cable, and then you'll need 3 lead electrodes to deliver your cardioversion to sync with the patient's R waves. So you'll just plug in those 3 lead cable to here. So this is one of the options. This is just a stat pads, and then one of the other options that we would have for a specialty area like the cath lab are these radiolucent pads. So these also don't come with that 3 lead monitoring or the CPR feedback device, but just to deliver joules. So the other thing is, on your pediatric pads, these also don't come with the built-in 3 leads. So if there was a case where you were going to use a pacemaker on a child, if you work in a unit that could possibly see that, then you should touch base with one of your super users that went to the class to see how to change out the cables on the back of the defib. Okay, we're going to run through a scenario now as an ACLS provider, how you would use this new defibrillator. So you're giving your patient his meds, and all of a sudden he's unresponsive. Are you okay? Are you okay? He's not. So you call code. Help. Call code, bring code card, and you're going to start CPR, start chest compressions while you wait for the code card. So when the code card comes in and my friends come in, somebody else is going to jump on the chest, and I'm going to take this, my pads are already connected, so all I have to do is open that up and put them on the chest. So we're going to open up the packet. They're going to come out just like this. So you'll notice that the 3 leads that we would normally have to put separate electrodes on built into the pads. So if we end up having to pace this guy or cardiovert him during the code, we aren't going to have to be fumbling around looking for little electrodes because they're built into the pads. So the other thing that's built into the pads is the CPR feedback device. So when we're going to place these pads, Zoll recommends an anterior-posterior placement instead of both anterior like we're used to. So it shows you very clearly on the pads that this one is number 1, and it's to be placed on the back. So you'll see on my little model here, it's just placed right on the back. These two pads are gonna sandwich the heart. So that goes on the back, and it wants you to put that one on first, just so it's easier to place this anterior pad with the CPR feedback device. So when you go to place this, you can leave it hooked all together if you have a patient that's about this size. It would fit nicely. So this electrode is going to go right on the heart, while this CPR feedback device goes right on the sternum, on the lower half of the sternum where you would normally do chest compressions. And if that fits nicely on your patient, just leave it just like that. But do know that this is made to be able to tear it apart really easily. So you can see that it's just connected with about 1 inch of foam. There's no wires or anything that run through there. So if you need to, just rip that off. It's important that this is over the sternum, and it's also important that the part that's going to deliver the joules is over the heart. So if you need to, if you have a large patient or a lady with a big breast, you need to just move it apart, pull the feedback device away from the electrode that delivers the shock, pull those apart and place them appropriately. So when those are placed, I'm going to continue my CPR right on top of this puck while I turn this to number 1 defib. Okay, I'm going to hook into my simulator here.
Check pads.
Okay, I'm checking. Talks to you. That's nice. Okay, so I'm going to continue my CPR. I'm going to show you some of the nice features of this defibrillator. So you'll see that normally if you were going to be doing compressions, you wouldn't be able to see the defib, right? Because you would see, it's going to tell me to push harder.
Good compression.
Thank you. So it's going to, normally you would have a lot of artifact from the compressions, but the Zoll has this algorithm built in that filters out those compression artifact, so you can see what's underneath it. So it's called see-through CPR, and that's the feature that allows you to read that underlying rhythm even while you're doing chest compression. So if this patient's really in defib, you'll be able to see the monitor and you'll be able to see that defib even while you're doing compressions, which allows for more time on the chest. Okay, so if I'm getting tired and I'm pooping out and I'm going too slow, it's going to remind me with that metronome that I need to be going at least that fast. Once that turns off, it's satisfied that I'm going fast enough. So as long as that defibrillator is quiet and it's not telling me to push harder, it's not telling me to go faster, then I'm doing a good job. So as long as it's quiet,
good compressions,
then you're doing a good job. Okay, so I can clearly interpret that rhythm as V-fib, and I'm going to go ahead and determine I need to charge and shock. So, thank you. I'm going to charge. I can continue good compressions till it tells me to shock. Clear. Shock delivered. Right back on to CPR. Stop. Save the paper. Okay. You'll notice here that it has a CPR timer that's counting down from 2 minutes, so it will alert me again that it's time to charge up to the next escalated shock. It also has this idle timer, which is reminding us that nobody's doing chest compressions right now. So that's a good reminder that to switch out, get somebody else on the chest. So that's how we will escalate. So my next shock in this algorithm that Zoll uses, it goes from 120 to 150 to 200. And that's different from our other monitors that we've used before, our other defibs. The Zoll delivers over a wider current, and so the effectiveness of the 200 joule shock is delivered by this machine is as effective, at least as effective as the shock delivered by the other defibrillator manufacturers that would use a 360. So we stair step up with Zoll from 120, 150, 200. So we'll have to remember that. The other nice thing about this is if you just brand new code and you first flip it on to defib and you just hit charge, it knows to start at 120. So the only time you'll have to use the energy select buttons is if you wanted something different for some reason. Okay. This energy select button is good for other things too, and other than just selecting how many joules you're going to deliver. One of the things is if you arrived at a code that started on the floor in BLS, with BLS providers, then it would start with the AED mode. So if they had already started by hitting defib and analyze and charge, now it's going to go along every 2 minutes telling you to analyze. So once the ACLS team arrives, we don't want it telling us when to analyze. Using this energy select button, just hitting up or down, takes it out of the analyze mode. The other thing the energy select button is good for is if you're in VFib and you charge, and while you're charging or even while it's telling you to shock, that patient just somehow flips out of it on their own, and you need to just dump that charge and not actually deliver it. The way you get out of it is by hitting this energy select up or down. Hit the down button and it dumps the charge so you aren't listening to it squeal at you. The other feature that we have that we're really excited about in our Zolls is capnography. So we know that capnography is a standard in code blues, that we should be monitoring this. So this is going to come, this is one of our cords that should not be thrown away, is our capnography cord. So this, this piece here stays with the defibrillator all the time. This is the disposable piece. It'll come in a package like this, tucked into the little back pocket. So this will just hook on. It doesn't go that way. It goes this way. It only fits in one way, so you don't have to remember. And then this fits on just between the ET tube and the bag valve mask. Or if you're not intubating this patient, you're just using a mask, then this fits here onto this simple mask if you're just delivering oxygen this way. Okay, so capnography, why is it so important? So a couple things about capnography in a code. As you'll see the capnography waveform going along, if your value is less than 10 millimeters of mercury, you're not getting good perfusion. It's probably screaming at you to press harder, but even if it's not, there's something, the pathology of this coding patient is telling you they are not perfusing well if your end-tidal CO2 is less than 10. If all of a sudden you're doing your great chest compressions and that end-tidal CO2 jumps up from 12 to 15 to 35 to 45, you have probably achieved return of spontaneous circulation. So the next time you check a pulse, you're probably going to have one. So just be ready for that, that the patient may have their own cardiac output now. The other time where we can use capnography is for prognostication, like how's it going? So after 20 minutes of a code, check out your capnography. If you are less than 10 after 20 minutes of a code, there is 0 chance of survival and it's time to call it. On the other hand, if it's been 20 minutes and your capnography reading is consistently at 20 millimeters of mercury or above, then you're doing a really good job on that code and you should keep trying. They have a chance of survival at that point. In between 10 and 20 is that gray area where we'll, you know, just keep trying some things, or maybe call it. It's kind of that gray area, 10 to 20. So those are some good things to remember about capnography. So another feature of our Zoll defibrillator is this soft key called code marker. So during a code, if you're the one running the defib, it's a nice marker to have to know some things that are going on. This will be time-stamped on the report that spits out at the end, and it's a good double check for our code documentation. So when you give epi, for instance, you just hit that and it will mark on the sheet, it will timestamp when that epi was given. So some of the options are CPR, intubate, epi, amio, atropine. There's a second page with a few things that are less common. So you can look at those things as you're looking at the defibrillator and just kind of get familiar with that. If you have any more questions, try and find a super user on your unit that has been to the class, or you can check out the HealthStream module that is been loaded on HealthStream. It is a Zoll-made module that goes in a lot more depth about the defibs. So if you want to know more, check out HealthStream. Thanks.